This Thursday morning, you're listening to ESPN Radio and ESPNGo1.com. Adam Reardon and Chris Doring with you. We turn our attention to Miami Hurricane sports. To do that, we talked to our good friend Danny Money of CanesInsight.com. He's an owner, he's a writer, he's a contributor, hosts a podcast, does all kinds of stuff over there, and spends a little time with us each and every Thursday morning here on the show. Danny, good morning. How you doing, buddy?
Good morning, guys. Doing pretty good.
Good. Hey, let me start with Al Golden, and what's become very, very popular amongst in recruiting, and I think maybe even more important than getting somebody's highlight tape anymore is you want these guys to come to your camp so you can see them with your eyes, you can meet the kids and stuff like that. How often does Al Golden have camps, and is summertime mainly the time where you can get a whole bunch of these top prospects in to get your own eye on them?
Yeah, well, I'll have about 5 or 6 a year, pretty much every weekend now for the rest of the month. And the main thing he wants to see, in addition to getting a look at these guys physically, how they move, how they perform, he wants to see how they take coaching. Will they listen to what he's saying? Are they smart? Do they finish the drills? What kind of motor do they have? And really, it's all about mitigating risk. You don't want to get these guys into camp in August or spring or whenever they come in and be surprised by anything. So when you get a chance to coach them, you get a chance to have them in a competitive environment, see them really up close, see how they interact with other campers, etc. You're mitigating the risk, you're mitigating the surprise, and you have a real good idea of what this kid's going to be when you get him into your program. Last year they took a bunch of kids from the camps, not the most highly rated guys, but guys who competed, guys who had the size they were looking for, they eyeballed them, they liked the size, and guys who had the athletic ability they were looking for. Obviously there's no pads, but you can see how a cornerback moves, how a receiver moves. They let them run the 40. They weigh them. It's a very good opportunity just to mitigate risk, to know what you're getting, and to eliminate surprises.
How about what the Hurricanes do? I mean, I know that the Gators here have grown their Friday Night Lights thing into a huge event, and kind of the maybe their biggest staple of gathering top talent around. What do the Hurricanes do in terms of trying to be maybe as similar on the visibility level that Florida and Florida State have come up with those things on?
Well, if I were to contrast Friday Night Lights to what Miami does, Friday Night Lights is more of a national platform, bigger stars, bigger names, more people travel in. So it's a bigger showcase, big name guys kind of coming in and competing. There's so much talent in the South Florida area that we don't even know about yet, this being early June, that the Golden Camp really brings less heralded guys who are just as talented as these out-of-staters coming to the Friday Night Lights camp an opportunity to compete and to kind of make their name. And you'll see a lot of guys who might show up at the Golden Camp and perform well, eventually become those 4 5-star recruits down the line. But this is an opportunity for them to compete and for them to make their name. So not as flashy as the Friday Night Lights, not as big, not as prime time, I guess you'd say, but hungry guys from the most fertile talent area in the country coming into competing.
All right, Danny, let's talk about the players that are on campus there. I believe 7-on-7s these guys are working out. Now, this, correct me if I'm wrong, this is stuff that players have to do on their own. There's really no coaching involved here, but the players have gotten together and done some 7-on-7 stuff out there. How do they look?
Yeah, coaches are not allowed to be involved. They actually did it at the lunch break of this past week's camp. I happened to be out there. Stephen Morris was really leading the 7-on-7. That's the projected starting quarterback for the Hurricanes. And basically they just ran a few plays. Obviously no linemen on the field, but they were able to work on their routes, work on their timing. Really had good chemistry out there. I mean, the talent and experience level, that's a different story. Still a young team, still has some holes, but you could really see the camaraderie start to build and just the self-discipline. They were coaching each other. You had older players coaching young players, junior players asking questions. It was really just a good feeling around the 7-on-7s. Actually, at one point, Stephen Moore signaled to switch sides, and the offense actually went on defense, and the defense went on offense after they'd already gotten their work in. And we got to see Ray Armstrong, who was a high school quarterback at Sanford Seminole near Orlando, actually won a state championship, play a little quarterback. Steve Morris, the quarterback, moved to corner, and they really had some fun, competed, and this is the kind of stuff that builds the team that you're going to see in the fall here in the dog days of summer.
Away from the football field, some big news since we talked to you last. The lawsuit between Randy Shannon and the University of Miami was settled out of court. Not a lot of details disclosed on that, but what does that mean in terms of getting that resolved and getting it behind them, especially with a guy like Randy Shannon, who as a player and assistant and head coach has meant so much to the University of Miami?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a positive thing. It's not a surprise. I remember I came on your show a few weeks ago, and this was going to get settled. There was no question about it. So just one less distraction to worry about. I don't think it was at the forefront of Coach Golden's mind or the players' minds or even the university's mind. They certainly had bigger concerns with the NCAA investigation and other issues, but certainly good to close the book on that. And hopefully Randy moves on. He certainly had success as a defensive coordinator. Won the award for the top assistant in college football the year that Miami won the national championship in 2001. So I'd like to see him move on, start coaching, and everybody kind of move on to the next chapter here.
Let me ask you a question real quick. You mentioned the other issues that they've been dealing with. The rumor about Yahoo Sports having another article coming out in terms of some additional allegations against the University of Miami and all. What's the latest that you have heard on that and some of the potential allegations that we may be found in that story? Do you know?
Well, the investigation, the NCAA investigation is still ongoing. I know that Yahoo never stopped. I mean, you have to remember what you're dealing with here is basically you have a convicted felon who wanted to sell a book, didn't find any takers for his book, found a reporter who was willing to do the legwork and corroborate all his allegations. The reporter's concerned with winning a Pulitzer. He wasn't up for a Pulitzer. Pulitzer actually went to one of the reporters in the Penn State scandal. So, you have a lot of self-interested parties still digging. The NCAA obviously has all the allegations in front of them. They're continuing to investigate the allegations that they feel have merit. As far as what the particular allegations are, I don't know. I know there was some stuff left on the table that Yahoo didn't initially run with in their first story. They might have find some additional corroboration and moving forward with that. I don't foresee any sort of real bombshells. I mean, we know what's out there. We know basically what happened here, what's being alleged. So I don't think it'll be a huge bombshell, but as far as specifics, I don't know.
Danny Money of CanesInsight.com, our guest here on the Sports Fix. Danny, something that I used to you could almost always count on was that the great football players at Miami would also spend time running track. Santana Mosses of the world. I mean Ed Reed, I believe, was like a decathlete or something along those lines at Miami. But right now, players aren't a part of the track team at the University of Miami. Is that an Al Golden thing, saying, "Hey, look, until we get our football house in order, you guys are football players, and we'll hold off on the track for as long as it takes"?
Well, the first part is actually kind of sad. If you're a Hurricane fan, we don't have that many players on the current squad that would even help the track team right now. You see, Travis Benjamin graduated, Lamar Miller graduated. You have Brandon McGee, who's a fast player. Maybe Thomas Finney or Philip Dorsett, but really the overall elite team speed, the top-end speed on the Miami Hurricanes roster is a little down right now. So that's one thing. I think Al's just concerned with building a big, strong, physical, cohesive football team. He doesn't want to have some of his best players taking off, not taking part in these workouts, being apart from the team, not weight training the same way, not building that cohesive unit that he's trying to achieve here. So I think part of it's an Al Golden thing. Another part of it is just we don't have the athletes right now that will really help the track team.
It's hard for me to admit, I got to be honest, it being a longtime Gator and all, but the Miami Hurricanes definitely have probably the top resume when it comes to sending guys to the NFL and the success they've had with that. But I was reading a story about a guy, Brandon Washington, who went in the draft last year, or this past season, went out early. And with all the success that these guys have had, is it a little bit maybe intoxicating for some of the players like Brandon Washington, who didn't end up going until the 6th round, to kind of get caught up in the NFL mystique and perhaps now he says he wishes he would have stayed. He made a mistake, and while some of the NFL folks told him he may go as high as the 2nd round, this is a guy that pretty much gave up his senior year for very little money in terms of signing bonus.
Well, looking at Brandon Washington specifically, he had a very tough family situation. As a sophomore, he was a third-year sophomore. He didn't play his first year. He went to prep school. He was first-team All-ACC as a guard. Really looked like the next great guard to come out of the University of Miami. Last year, there were some injuries. There was more depth at guard than there was at tackle, so we shifted Brandon Washington out to left tackle. And he had a bit of an up-and-down season. That's the kind of season you want to go pro off of. but obviously he had the family situation. He felt confident in his own abilities. It was the intoxication with the NFL success that you mentioned. And also you had Drew Rosenhaus in his year. Drew Rosenhaus signed basically every single Miami player that came out this year that was worth signing. So he was in these kids' years telling them they're going to be second-round, third-round picks. So all that together led to his decision to go pro. The teams were a little skittish on his junior tape. Like I said, he was a bit out of position, and he ended up slipping. Now, he may end up being a great player in the pros. With these Miami players, they're not all top picks necessarily, the ones that succeed in the pros. For example, Calais Campbell, he thought he was going to be a top 10 pick, had a tough junior year, went pro anyways, slipped to the middle of the second round, lost a lot of money on the front end, but ended up signing a 5-year, $55 million contract last month because he performed so well once he got into the pros. So, you know, a lot of these guys got drafted lower than they expected. I think they could still succeed when they get to the next level and make their money on their second contract, but certainly there's a lot of them that are questioning their decision to go.
You mentioned Drew Rosenhaus and the fact that a lot of these guys sign with him, and obviously his proximity to Miami and his relationship with Miami makes a lot of sense. What is his relationship with the school? I mean, obviously with the whole Nevin Shapiro thing, not that they're the same sort of people or anything like that, but whenever you talk about players and agents and how close he is to the school and how close he is to the area down there, is the University of Miami necessarily a huge fan of Drew Rosenhaus or not so much?
Not at all. I mean, he's an alum, and he's close with many former players. He spends time around the program to the extent he's allowed, which is basically as much as just your common fan is allowed, but certainly not a fan. Al Golden, you can expect that in the years to come, he's going to use what happened this year as an example and specifically point to Drew Rosenhaus as somebody who made false promises and who is not going to be there to make up the money that these kids lost on this contract. Drew Rosenhaus is not going to say, oh, you went in the 6th round, I told you go in the 3rd, I'll make up the difference. So I think Al's going to use that as an example going forward and really kind of pound Drew and to the extent that he can, steer kids away from Drew. But people at the University of Miami can't be too fond of Drew Rosenhaus. He doesn't have any special access, certainly, and Miami just put in some internal regulations in place to further limit the exposure that their kids can have to agents with a guy like Drew Rosenhaus particularly in mind.
Now, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, with the summer doldrums upon us at this point in time, what are the important dates and things going on right now with the Hurricane program that we need to know about, possible nuggets that you can pass along to us as well?
Well, really, June's going to be all about the camps. So we talked about them earlier. They'll be happening basically every weekend. You should see new names emerge on the radar, new kids possibly commit. And also, those are going to be the sites of 7-on-7s where the current team gets together, and you'll hear about players start to emerge. For example, Tracy Howard, the 5-star cornerback that Miami signed in this year's recruiting cycle, he had a great practice at last week's 7-on-7s, intercepted a pass to the house, almost intercepted another, really looked like a future starter. So in these doldrums, what you're going to look for is new names emerging on the recruiting scene, and also some of the younger players or some of the unheralded upperclassmen start to emerge in these 7-on-7s, make plays, and start to create a buzz for themselves.
Now, Danny, I love seeing 17, 18, 19-year-old kids get the opportunity to make millions of dollars with the Major League Baseball draft. But as a Miami Hurricane baseball fan, watching that first round had to be a bit painful after the way that this season ended. Looked like about 5 of the top 30 guys were probably slated to come to the University of Miami, and with the kind of money you can make in the first round, shouldn't probably expect any of those guys to show up, correct?
No, and it's not new for Miami. Alex Rodriguez was a Miami signee, Rick Ankiel. But one name that didn't go in the draft that you will see in the orange and green, who might be one of the finest baseball players to ever come out of the state, is David Thompson. This is a free sport athlete, played baseball, football, basketball at Westminster Christian, also the high school of Alex Rodriguez down in Miami. He broke Prince Fielder's home run record for the state. Smaller guy, about 5'11", third baseman, but great hitter, great power, just a great all-around athlete. He's actually going to play some quarterback for the University of Miami in August. So one of the finest athletes to ever come out of Miami-Dade County. He's going to go to the U. He did not get picked in the draft high simply because he made it known that he was going to play college sports. So that's a coup for Jim Morris. Obviously not a good week for him, but at least he had that one positive glimmer of hope with David Thompson.
Is that a coup for Jim Morris or a coup for the next guy? I mean, is there any talk at all about Jim Morris's future, or has that been squelched and say, look, he's going to be here next year, he'll be here for a long time?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of talk, a lot of people calling for his head, a lot of talk about him leaving. He'll have another year. I really don't see it happening. You know, people are used to success down here, so they're maybe quicker to pull the trigger than others. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes next year. But certainly, I don't think anything is imminent, certainly.
Danny Money of CanesInsight.com, the best in the business covering Miami Hurricane sports, man. I go to the website each and every day. I certainly recommend you heading to the West End Zone if you've got some time to burn at work. The epic fail thread is worth at least a couple of views. I started back at 1, and I'm trying to work my way to like 120-something, wherever we're at on that one there. Danny, really appreciate your time, my friend, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you, man.
Hey, thank you, Adam. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Hey, coming up on the other side of the break, we'll wrap up hour number 1 of the Sports Fix. You're listening to ESPN Radio. Find us online at ESPN.